Hey everybody! On today's episode of With or Without Whiskey, we will be reviewing Jack Daniel's 10-year-old whiskey. Stick around. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of With or Without Whiskey. As always, I'm your host Ryan, and today we will be reviewing Jack Daniel's 10-year-old whiskey. So, just like always, I'm going to start with a brief introduction where I give you some interesting facts about the whiskey itself, the distillery, and anything else fun I may have found. Then I'll go into the review aspect of the show where I'll give you my nosing and my tasting notes. I'll give it a grade from 1 to 100 and let you guys know if I'm going to be with it or without it. And before we get started, do me a favor and show your support for the channel by hitting the subscribe button down below. That really helps me out. So I already went over a lot about the Jack Daniel's distillery and some fun stories about that in my video about the Jack Daniel's Old No. 7 whiskey. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, go check out that video. Today, I will only be discussing the Jack Daniel's 10-year. Jack Daniel's 10-year-old Tennessee whiskey was a 2021 limited release and was the first age-stated whiskey the distillery has released in over 100 years. This batch of whiskey was composed of a little over 200 barrels and was said to only yield about 24,000 bottles. This whiskey did undergo the Lincoln County process, where the whiskey slow drips through maple wood charcoal for 6 days. The barrels that aged this whiskey were stored in the Buzzard's Roost, which are the highest storage racks in the warehouse, for 8 years. Then they were moved to the lower floor for 2 years to finish the aging process. Jack Daniel's 10-year is 10 years old and is 97 proof, or 48.5% ABV. It has a mash bill of 80% corn, 12% malted barley, and 8% rye. It has a level 3 barrel char and costs about $70. All right, let's get into it. That one was on there. All right. So, take a look at the bottle of this right now. It's, to me anyway, it kind of looks like a mix between the single barrel bottles and the regular bottles. It's not quite that full square like you'll get in the single barrel select or a single barrel proof, but it's not quite that tall rectangle bottle you'll get with Old No. 7. So it's kind of like in between. At least that's what I think anyway. All right, so take a look at the color of this whiskey. It's a lot darker than the normal Jack Daniel's would be. And that's probably due to the higher age statement. It spent a lot more time in the barrel, so it had a lot more time to interact with the wood and pull out some of those flavors from there. This one's aged at least 10 years, obviously, and the Old No. 7 bottle is usually aged around 4 years. So this is going to pick up a lot more color and hopefully a lot more flavor. All right, let's get into the nose. Okay, so right away I'm getting that heavy oak smell, but I'm also getting kind of like a different woody scent, maybe like maple wood or something along those lines. There's a very strong cherry note in there, but it doesn't really smell like those maraschino cherries. It smells more like the Luxardo cherries, the ones with that thick syrup in it. I'm definitely getting some cinnamon. And I'm getting molasses as well. You know, that thick sugar syrup kind of stuff. It's very, very rich and has a very dense kind of smell. There's not too much of a burn on this one. Like it's not really burning my nose, even though it's at 97 proof. But it does smell very like dense and rich. I get a little bit of berries, but I'm also getting like that grape juice kind of smell. I got that in the Coy Hill, and I'm getting it again in this one. So it seems to be a little pattern with those higher aged Jack Daniel's products. Let's give it one more nose. Yeah, oak, cinnamon, that molasses smell, and like those dark fruit notes, like kind of like plums or raisins kind of there. So far it's got a pretty good nose to it. Let's see if that carries over to the palate. Cheers, guys. Okay, same thing on the taste. You get a lot more of that oak in here. And this is where the spiciness actually comes in. Like I'm getting a good kind of rye flavor from that, but I'm also getting the sweetness. Like, how do I put it? I said kind of the Luxardo cherries on the nose. With the taste, it's kind of more like those bourbon cherries. Like if you ever go into like a liquor store and they sell like those jars of cherries and it says like bourbon cherries on there, the juice kind of has a little bit more flavor to that. I'm kind of getting that from this. Let's try it again. Yeah, same thing. Oak. I'm getting that spicy note, and the molasses note is carrying over into this. It's just a little bit more at the end. Like it's very dense, it's very oaky, and then it starts to kind of break off into that sweetness. The finish is pretty good. It's got a decently long finish. Nothing too crazy, but I'd put it above medium, maybe medium long to long finish. It's very oaky and it's very dry. Like I get the dry mouth feeling I would get. I usually get that from like the higher proof stuff. It's a little bit bitter on the end, like kind of like an IPA beer almost. Like it's got the same kind of aftertaste, and it's a little bit tart. Let's see one more time. Yeah, as it goes down, it starts to get like very bitter and very tart, but it's not, I wouldn't say that's a negative thing. It's pretty good with this. Like it definitely goes well. It's not overpowering, it's not too crazy, but it doesn't leave you with that like sugary mouth you'll get in some other things. All right, let's see what happens when we add a little bit of water to it. One, two. All right, swirl it around a little bit. All right, I'm hoping this changes it up a little bit. I don't want it to be like just more of the same. Okay, the water kind of changed the nose a little bit. It definitely dulled it out. I'm not getting much of those sweet notes. Like I'm not getting that grape juice. The molasses note is pretty well hidden. I'm definitely getting the oak. I'm definitely getting the berry kind of sweetness though. Yeah, it's got a little bit of fresh berries, and it's got some vanilla notes in there too. So the water took it down a little bit with some of the sweetnesses, but gave it the vanilla note. All right, let's see what it did to the palate. Okay, that one's a lot more cherry than it was before. So the water kind of opened it up a little bit on the taste. It brought forward some of that cherry instead of having it as like a secondary note. There's definitely a strong oak flavor right after. So the cherry is number one right now, and then comes the oak. I'm getting a little bit of tannins kind of on the finish. It's not like it was before, where it was like super bitter and super dry, but it is clinging to like my cheeks and my tongue a little bit, so I'm getting that good mouth feel. Let's give it another try. Yeah, very cherry, very oaky. I get some of those tannins at the end. The aftertaste is a little woody. I wouldn't say like that oak flavor, just kind of like if you just went to the doctor and they had the tongue depressor in your mouth. It kind of tastes like that. Yeah, there's really not much else to that. The water took it down a little bit, but kind of concentrated the wood and the cherry note. Let's give it one more. There's a little bit of rye bite to it, but it's not really that noticeable. Like once you get past the cherry, once you get past the oak, there's a little bit of like rye spice, but it's not that overpowering. All right, stick around for the grade. All right, Jack Daniel's 10-year-old whiskey. What do I think? So, on the nose, it was very wood heavy. I got oak, but I also got a little bit of maple wood too. So it was kind of like a mix of different kind of wood. There was some cinnamon, there was some dark fruit notes. I got that grape juice smell, which I've only ever had in the Coy Hill, and I got a good molasses scent, which I always enjoy. The taste was good too. It had a very strong oak note. It was a little bit spicy on the front, and it had those good cherry notes in there. There was a hint of molasses towards the end, but it wasn't the most prevalent of the flavors in there. The finish was pretty long, longer than most Jack Daniel's products, but there wasn't much else to it. It had some cherry, it had some oak, it was a little bitter and a little tart, but there wasn't really too much going on. When you added water to this whiskey, that's when it really started to change, but not so much in a good way. It kind of muted everything. When it came to the nose, the only real scents I was able to pick up were the oak, some cherry, and maybe a little bit of like vanilla and caramel. But other than that, it was kind of dull. The taste wasn't much better. There was a very strong cherry and a very strong oak note right there, but there really wasn't much else. I got a little bit of tannins, a good little mouth coating, but the flavors just kind of consolidated into the two major ones. The little outliers that kind of give it some nuance were completely gone. The finish on the water, again, was more of the same. It was just cherry and oak. Nothing crazy, nothing more. Even those bitter notes and that little tart taste was gone from that. So, Jack Daniel's 10-year whiskey. I think I'm going to give it an 81 out of 100. This was still a very good whiskey. I did enjoy drinking it. It had some good notes in the nose, and it had some good flavors in the taste. It just wasn't as complex as I wanted it to be. Now, that might be because of the hype, saying, oh, this is the first Jack Daniel's age statement that's been released in 100 years. It's supposed to be good, yada, yada. It could have been that, or it could have just been older Jack Daniel's is still Jack Daniel's. So I'm not sure. But it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So there's that. So for Jack Daniel's 10-year-old whiskey, I think I'm going to go with it. It was still good. I enjoyed it, and I would definitely drink this on a regular basis. The only problem is it was a limited release. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to release this every year or this was just a one-time thing. I hope they do keep it out. Just, I don't want them to mark up the price. At $70, this is a fair price for the whiskey. I would buy it again at $70. I would probably pass on it at $80. It's good for where it's at. It just doesn't really make that $80 to $100 whiskey for me. But it's still pretty good. So if you haven't had it before and you see it around for around $70, I'd consider picking it up. Well, that does it for today's episode of With or Without Whiskey. If you enjoyed the episode and you had a good time, please do me a favor, hit the subscribe button down here. Also, give me a like and hit the bell notification. That way you guys get informed every time I drop a new video. Also, leave me a comment. Let me know. Have you had Jack Daniel's 10-year before? Do you like it? Do you think it's okay? Do you prefer it to some of the other limited releases? Or are you going to stick with regular Jack Daniel's? I'd love to hear your opinions. Until next time, stay safe, guys. Take care.